Part 5, Section 2, Chapter 17 of Short History of the Christian Church by John Fletcher Hurst. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 17, Alexander Campbell and the Disciples of Christ. Few men have impressed themselves more profoundly on the religious life of their age than Alexander Campbell. His personality was of the most vigorous type, and for over a generation his name was a tower of strength over the whole United States. His father, the Reverend Thomas Campbell, a relative of the poet Campbell, was an Irish Presbyterian minister of the Secession Church. He came to America in 1807, and served under the Associate Synod several Presbyterian churches in western Pennsylvania. Both father and son had come under the influence of the Haldanes, and this fact must be taken into the account in their theological development. Alexander was born near Ballymena, County Antrim, Scotland, September 12th, 1788. He was educated at the University of Glasgow, and in 1809 came to this country. He joined his father at Washington, Pennsylvania, and very soon both began to enunciate views which excited widespread attention. Especially with respect to human creeds, he took advanced ground. His platform for Christian union, which he laid down at the very beginning of his ministry, anticipated the irenical proposals of the Protestant Episcopal House of Bishops in 1886. But Campbell, with that fearlessness and loyalty to his principles which were characteristic of him, took a much more radical position. He would dissolve the whole later superstructure of the Church, and go back to the simplicity of apostolic times. "Christian union," ran his notable words, "can result from nothing short of the destruction of creeds and confessions of faith, inasmuch as human creeds and confessions have destroyed Christian union." In consistency with this, he further said, "Nothing ought to be received into the faith and worship of the Church, or be made a term of communion among Christians, that is not as old as the New Testament; nor ought anything to be admitted as of divine obligation in the Church constitution or management, save what is enjoined by the authority of our Lord Jesus Christ and his apostles upon the New Testament Church, either in express terms or by approved precedent." The laying down of this radical Puritan platform by this young man of 22 was an epoch-making event in the history of the American Church. A rupture was imminent. A church of so firm a foundation in creed as the Presbyterian could hardly be expected to bear with so revolutionary a character. Campbell and his father withdrew, and formed a new congregation at Bush Run, Pennsylvania, 1810. On the birth of his first child, in 1812, he was led into a thorough study of the baptismal question. This convinced him of the scripturalness of immersion, and he and his whole congregation were immersed. Thus the ties which bound him to the Scotch creed were severed one by one. He used these memorable words to Lewes, the Baptist minister, who baptized him: "I have set out to follow the apostles of Christ and their Master, and I will be baptized only into the primitive Christian faith." Alexander Campbell and his father were received into the Redstone Baptist Association, and they immediately began forming congregations, which were also received into the same association. They preached their views with ardor and eloquence, and they soon began to make a stir through the whole Ohio region. Campbell had taken up his residence in what is now Bethany, West Virginia, where, for a time, he conducted a high school for boys. It was really, in intention, a theological seminary. Soon the Baptists became dissatisfied with his views, and furious controversies ensued. The battle was waged bitterly. Associations were disrupted, churches destroyed, and the end was the permanent loss of Campbell and his followers to the Baptist Church. They formed, about 1827, an independent church called the Disciples of Christ, the act of exclusion being taken by the Baptists. The subsequent life of this earnest and gifted man was most active and aggressive. He established a periodical press, 1823, the printing being done at first in his own house in Bethany. He traveled through the West, organizing churches, preaching to vast crowds, lecturing, debating. He leavened the whole country with his views. Few men have exerted a wider influence. He was a fearless controversialist, and loved to meet in the free forum of discussion the ablest men of the time. In 1828 he held his great debate with Robert Owen at Cincinnati on the truth of Christianity. His powerful arguments on that occasion converted several prominent citizens, and made a lasting impression on the city and surrounding country. The year before, he met the Rev. William McCalla at Washington, Kentucky, to discuss baptism. One of his most famous encounters was with the Archbishop Purcell in Cincinnati in 1836 on the Roman Catholic Church. Campbell had a noble presence, a powerful voice, and a mind of exceeding strength and agility, and it is safe to say no cause ever suffered in his hands on a public debate. At the same time, he was a man of the purest character and the highest Christian consecration. He died at Bethany, West Virginia, March 4th, 1866. As the founder of one of the largest churches of American origin, the life of Alexander Campbell has a significance second to few in American church history. The church founded thus has spread with astonishing rapidity. The disciples number now nearly 800,000. Their chief strength is in the Middle West and the Southwest. Their first college, Bethany College, Bethany, West Virginia, was founded by Campbell in his own town in 1841. They support 2 universities and 30 colleges and academies. Their college at Hiram, Ohio, had for its president James A. Garfield, who likewise taught there for some years. Garfield was also a disciple preacher until he began his political career in 1856. He remained until his death an active worker in the denomination and a trustee of Hiram and Bethany colleges. This church sustains missions in several foreign fields, and is an energetic and evangelical body. It is thoroughly in harmony with the Church Catholic on all essential points. On account of the disciples repudiating common theological terms like Trinity, consubstantial, as divisive, they have been sometimes represented as Unitarians. But this does them very great injustice. They hold to the divinity of Jesus Christ as the foundation of their faith. The Christians, or Christian connection, have often been confounded with the disciples of Christ. The 2 bodies should be kept entirely distinct. The former came into existence about 1804, when a part of the O'Kelly secession from the Methodist Episcopal Church, a portion of the Baptist Church in Hartland, Vermont, and a Presbyterian schism in Kentucky and Tennessee in 1801, united to form one church, called the Christian Church. The bond of union in each case was the desire to get rid of creeds and to confess the simple, primitive gospel. They are very similar to the disciples in doctrine and organization. As to the sacraments, they are Baptists. They hold that Christ is divine, but care nothing for the ancient definitions. End of chapter 17.